Welcome back again to Irenkes Kitchen. I have another family favorite recipe, and this time I'd like to share something that I've kind of created on my own, and it's called Irenkes' own oven baked pork slices, Sült Disznó Szeletek. And so what you will need for it is 3 kilograms of boneless pork loin, center, and rib roast. So I bought just a rib roast at the grocery store. And then 1 red bell pepper, 1 medium onion, 8 to 10 garlic cloves, and 2 cans of 284 milliliters of sliced mushrooms. Or you can buy fresh mushrooms, and you need approximately 1.5 cups of that, and then you can slice it up into small pieces. So, and then you would need 2 cups of water, and for the seasoning, ground black pepper, salt, paprika, and then also some vegeta or vegetable base, and 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil. So what I did first is I cut a roast into 1/2-inch slices. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. And I put them in a large roasting pan. And what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to sprinkle the salt, vegeta, and pepper on both sides of the pork chops. So I'm going to start with my salt on one side. So I've got my fork ready here to turn the pork slices over. So I'm just going to start with the salt first, a layer of salt, and I'm going to sprinkle half of that on there for the one side. And then I'm going to take my vegeta, and if you can't find vegeta, you can actually get your favorite vegetable base. There's many out there that you can choose from, but this one is the MSG free one, vegeta. So I'm going to take half of that, and I'm going to sprinkle it evenly on one side, and then I'm going to take my ground black pepper, and I'm going to take half of that, and I'm going to sprinkle that over the pork slices. And then I'm going to turn over the pork slices. So you should be able to get a lot from this. If you want half the amount, then you just use about 1.5 kilograms of a pork roast. So depending on whether you want to freeze these, because these freeze well in freezer containers. So that's what I'll do. And or if you're expecting a large group of people, this is a great recipe to serve. So I'm just going to turn these over, and then I'm going to do the same thing. And now this is a recipe that I kind of created on my own. And it's really quite delicious. And it bakes in the oven for about hour and a half in the oven, and of course you test it to see whether it's well done with a meat thermometer. So I've just got those turned over, and then I'm going to start again with the sea salt. I'm just going to sprinkle the rest of this over to the pork slices. And then I'm going to do the vegetable base, and this is called vegeta. And you can get this probably at a deli store or your import section of your grocery store. And it's the MSG free one. That's the one I'm using for my cooking. And then the black pepper. Sprinkle that over the remaining black pepper over the pork slices. And then what I've done is I've diced some onions and garlic, and some onions and garlic and pepper, and then I've kind of mixed it together like that. So, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to evenly distribute this over the pork. So I'm going to just take this and evenly distribute it over sprinkle it over the the pork on top. And this, as I said, this recipe can be put into freezer containers, and you can freeze it down and warm it up in the microwave. So, and the red pepper gives it a really nice color. You could actually use different colors of like orange or the yellow bell peppers too, if you want to make it really colorful. And it's appetizing. Looks appetizing that way. So I've got the garlic mixed in, so I've kind of mixed everything together into that. And then I'm going to add the mushrooms. So I have the 2 cans of 284 milliliters of canned sliced mushrooms, and I'm going to spread that over the pork, on top of the pork and the vegetables. So you can use fresh mushrooms also, and you just slice them up like this. So I'm just going to sprinkle them over the pork. Now this can be served with potatoes or pasta or rice. I mentioned that in my recipe. And you can also obtain the recipe on my website. So I'm just going to, I'm using 2 cans of mushrooms. If you don't like a whole bunch of mushrooms, you can use 1 can. But for this amount of meat, you'd probably want to use the mushrooms. 2 cans of mushrooms. And this bakes in the oven for about an hour and a half at different temperatures, and I'll get to that in a minute and explain how that's baked. So after you've put the mushrooms on top, then you get your oil, and I've got 3 tablespoons of oil. You'd sprinkle the oil over the vegetables like that. Okay, and then the last thing is your paprika. So you sprinkle that on the top, because this gives it that sort of red kind of color to it. It looks really great when it comes out of the oven. So I'm just sprinkling that, and I've used about 2 teaspoons of paprika. If you want to use more or less, it's up to you. You can modify with the spices. And this is Hungarian sweet paprika. Okay, and then I'm going to put 2 cups of water. Now, when you're adding the water, there's just a tip. You want to add it to the sides. You don't want to be pouring it over. The idea is that you don't want your paprika to be washed away. So just to the sides of your meat. Just around the edges here. Pour it around evenly. And I've got about 2 cups of water here. Just gives it some moisture. Okay. And then you make sure to preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. And you bake the pork slices for about an hour, and then you lower the temperature to 325 degrees Fahrenheit and bake it for an additional 30 minutes. And of course you would check with a meat thermometer as to the temperature of how to bake pork. And I've got the instructions on my copy of my recipe also, if you need to make a copy of it alongside with my video. So you would check pork slices to make sure it's cooked, and you test it with a meat thermometer, and the internal temperature should be 170 degrees Fahrenheit, about 77 degrees Celsius. And then it's ready to serve with either rice or potatoes. And if you have any leftover meat, then you can actually freeze it in freezer containers. And then you can just warm it up when you come home from work, or you can take it to work, warm it up at work, and make some rice to go with it, or potatoes, or you can just eat it with a salad. So it is a great recipe for that. So I'm going to be back to show you what this recipe looks like when it's coming out of the oven. Welcome back again to Irenkes Kitchen. I have a recipe, an oven-baked pork slice recipe of my own. It's called Irenkes' Own Oven-Baked Pork Slices, Sült Disznó Szeletek. And what I used was a boneless pork loin, center, and rib roast, and I cut them into half-inch slices. And then, of course, I put the pepper, onions, and garlic on top of the pork and the mushrooms. And you can use fresh mushrooms. I added 2 cups of water to the sides of the meat, and then I put my seasoning on prior to adding the vegetables. So I did all the seasoning first with the black pepper and salt and paprika, and not paprika, but the vegeta or vegetable base. And then I added the oil on top of the pork chops, and then I added the 2 teaspoons of Hungarian paprika last on top of all the other ingredients. Put it in the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about an hour, and then lowered my temperature to 325 degrees Fahrenheit, and then baked it for an additional 30 minutes. So it takes approximately 1.5 hours. It's a good idea to test the meat with a meat thermometer and make sure that the temperature is right. And the internal temperature of the meat should be about 170 degrees Fahrenheit, about 77 degrees Celsius. So I'd like to show you what this great recipe looks like coming out of the oven. And here we have in the large roasting pan, I've got some the pork chops, and you can see the brilliant colors of the color of the paprika and the bell peppers. And of course you can use other colored types of peppers, like the orange or yellow ones. You can mix them to make them even more colorful and appetizing. So this is a great recipe to serve to a large group of people. If you want to use half the amount, you can use 1.5 kilograms pork roast, and you can freeze this in freezer containers. So what I would like to show you is what it looks like on a plate with some rice, served with some rice. I've chosen rice to serve tonight for dinner. You can also use pasta or potatoes, or you can serve it with a salad. So if you have any questions or comments regarding the recipe for today, you can contact me at Irene@irenkeskitchen.com or irenkeskitchen.com. Until next time, bon appetit, jo eet vadet.